Well, good evening. Good evening.
Hello, 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 everybody. Are on the relationship cycle with Jorge and Nelsa. Puppy. Today, we are talking about something that most people don't have a conversation about until maybe the second or third marriage, but prenups.
Yeah, it's starting to become a thing, and it's funny because I was, scrolling on Facebook and I saw that this soccer player that plays in France, and this guy makes buku money, and he married this woman that they a little over 2 years,
Hmm.
and she, went through the process, went to court and she was claiming half of his assets. So then the judge told her, ma'am, this man doesn't have all these assets that you're asking for. And to her surprise, he has put all his assets under his mom's things as far as properties and businesses and all that. So when she went in to, when the whole divorce process and all that was happening, she was thinking she was going to get half, and obviously that was not the case. And this was world news. This went around. So basically, he
Mhm.
used his mama as the prenup, and
Wow.
yeah. And then I was like, you know what? This would be a good topic because I also know a few
Yeah.
people. I know a few people in my circle that also use prenups before the marriage.
Right. Well, for me, this was always something that I thought was for rich people. Quite honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. You know, kind of lower middle class background growing up. And if that high, really. So that was just nothing you ever heard about. And when I finally did, get engaged, and while we were dating, um, I've only been married the one time. So my ex-husband and I at the time did talk about it, but we were both like, well, neither one of us has shit. So it's not really a big deal, So we did not do a prenup. And fortunately, we still had care for one another, and it wasn't such a awful, debilitating divorce in terms of just the way we treated each other after. So we both retained assets that were ours before the marriage. I didn't really want anything. I didn't ask for you know, anything that he had brought to the table, and he didn't ask for anything that I brought to the table, as minuscule as it was. Um, and so to me, this was just like prenup. Yeah, I guess some people do need to talk about this because there are people out there now who, even if it feels small, things like retirement, your retirement, your pension can be up for grabs in a divorce. Property that maybe you had or, has been left to you could be
Inheritance.
up for grabs. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing because, and I agree with you initially. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I agree with you that, it seemed like it was more for business owners and wealthy people that were maybe marrying
Mm-hmm.
someone who wasn't on their financial level, right, as far as
Mm-hmm.
that goes. Or maybe they were marrying somebody who didn't have any, uh, cooperation with the assets that they've gained or wealth that they've gained.
Mm-hmm.
But looking deeper into it, it's almost like think of it like an insurance policy in case the marriage doesn't go as planned. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we literally have insurance on our phones. Like we have
Right.
insurance, we have life insurance, we have insurance on our car. We wear seat belts when we get in cars just in case something
Mhm.
really bad were to happen.
You're
So
right.
so to me, I don't see the issue of it. To me, I think that it is something that if um, both people should have that conversation. And to me, it's simple. Whatever we have before the marriage is consumed, that is for us to decide how we want to split,
Mm.
right? How we want to divide it. Now, once the marriage happens, whatever we build together and get together, then yeah, I do think that we need to negotiate a fair
Mhm.
way of how we want to divide those assets. But let's say you've been a doctor 15 years and you've been doing it for 10 years, 12 years, and then a couple years later you meet a guy who's maybe I don't know, trying to be a rapper and, kind of finding his way through life, but he wants to dip into those 12 years that you worked hard and that stacked up your money. And to
Right.
me, that is troubling, man or woman. To me, the gender is regardless, in my point. Like, the
Yeah,
gender is
absolutely.
irrelevant in this
Yeah.
scenario. But to me, if you worked hard to get where you're at and you meet someone or you fall in love with someone who maybe is not on that economical level, but you still love them, yeah, I think that there should be some safety rails to protect yourself in case the marriage is happening for all the wrong reasons, right? Because marriage is
Mhm.
intended for genuine love. However, that is not always the case. And we are
Right.
both fully aware of that, that sometimes there are hidden agendas and ulterior motives, whether it be, somebody trying to get, citizenship, or somebody trying to, get pregnant, or somebody just sees
Mhm.
that an opportunity to,
Level
marry a
up.
rich guy. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I'm in the camp, like, if I'm gonna be with you and make that kind of sacred commitment, because to me, marriage is a sacred commitment, not just a business thing. You know, there's the question that comes up for most people, especially women. Well, why would you want me to get a prenup? Because that speaks to the fact that you don't think that this will last. And so that kind of becomes a circular argument for a lot of people that, if you love me, you'll sign because you're not in it for my stuff. And then the other side of that is, well, you're asking me to do something as if you don't love and trust me. So why would we get married? So it becomes this real, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
No, it does. And I agree with you that it is a slippery slope. However, um, there is an option to add clauses and provisions
Hmm.
to kind of negate some of those pitfalls. So, for example, there is a fidelity clause
Hmm.
that you can add into the prenup that, hey, if everything goes as planned, then we're good. However, if one of the parties were to cheat, then this is what somebody is going to be entitled, because obviously you broke the clause and you committed adultery, even though that was not part of the agreement when
Hmm.
we got married. So there are clauses that you can add in the event that somebody, whether it be a man or woman or whomever, does step out of the marriage. There's also this thing called a sunset clause, which is basically after X amount of years, the prenup can become null and voided. And to me, that is important because, hey, if we're, in our 70s or late 60s or whatever,
Yeah, we
then
made
hey,
it. We
yeah,
made
we,
it.
yeah, like, at that point, we ride or die. We're gonna die together, baby. So,
That's right.
so to me, that would be my counter argument to a woman who may say,
Mhm.
"Hey, you know what? If you're already expecting to fail, then why are we doing this?" Then I would say, "All right, well, let's sit down, find some common ground, so that way you are protected, I'm protected, and if we're both married happily, then we're not even going to have to worry about these issues. And there you go, you keep it moving."
Okay, so you did a lot more research on this than I did, Poppy, getting prepared for this one. Um, do you know if prenups can be made and drawn up together like a will, or is it one person getting another one to sign on?
So there is definitely a meeting with lawyers,
Mhm.
and there are some things that you can negotiate. You can definitely have some back and forth. Typically, the person that has the major assets is usually the one that's kind of driving some of
Mhm.
those conversations and clauses and all that, which,
Mhm.
understandably, they're the ones that have more to lose. So that makes sense to me. But at the end of the day, it is strictly between the individuals and the lawyers, and it's not recorded. However,
Mhm.
let's keep it 100, right? Like,
Mhm.
obviously, marriage is a beautiful thing, and everybody, has dreamed about the happily ever after. But keeping it 100, marriage ends one way or another, whether it be via death or via divorce. So
Mhm.
so in the event that that were to happen, do you want to rely on the courts to figure out how this is going to go and have a prolonged process and a back and forth with this? Or do you want to set some structure and some guidelines so that way it makes things easier in the event that something were to happen.
Exactly. And that does make sense. Like, too often we do kind of allow fate to drive us, or our emotions a lot of times. And I think this does sound like a very logical, well thought out plan, because you want to plan to succeed, but you also sometimes do have to plan for life happens. Sometimes you can love someone, but you can have irreconcilable differences. You can grow apart in your interests and in the things that move you. Your purpose changes. There's so many things that do change. And again, I know I probably said this before, but it says till death do us part, but that doesn't always mean the physical death of your partner. It could mean the death of this particular relationship as it is. So I think the prenup can be a positive thing. I think it's just kind of where your mindset is. And, if you really are going into it with pure motives on both sides, whether you have a lot of assets or not, um, then, this is just like one more step you would take of paperwork together, because you're going to have to draw up a will eventually. You're going to have to, make provision for your family and, your loved ones if something were to happen to you while you're in this marriage. This just seems to make sense in terms of, and I suppose you could have like an heir clause, like if there are heirs produced from the marriage, then the children could get this, that, and the other, or whatever. So I do see it now. A lot of times Hollywood made the prenup such a an evil tool of the one who had so much money. Like it's just very manipulative, and setting the young, hopeful, naive bride up for failure in the long run. But um, I don't know if you've ever seen the First Wives Club, either the new series or the old movie, but it's sort of like this picture of a wife who has really toiled with her husband and helped him, and we see those images sometimes and think the worst about the prenup, as opposed to like you're going into it, both of you, with your feet on the ground, your hearts together, and you want to soar together, but just in case the engine sputters out, you know y- it it really makes a lot of financial sense. So if from that angle, I definitely agree with it.
No, and I agree, and I think that to me it's just a safety rail. And to me, it's not about how much you have or how much assets you're protecting,
Mm.
because let's say you're both equal playing field. Let's say you both are teachers, but like you said, right? You may have a retirement account, or you may have an inheritance from your parents or your grandparents that may be coming one day, right? And let's be honest, if your parents leave you something behind to you, they're leaving it to
Right.
you, not to a marriage. You know what I mean? Or to the grandkids, or your kids, or whatever. So to me, I know some people are like, oh, well, I don't have much, so I don't see the point of it. Well, at some point you may, or maybe, let's say you have two young daughters, right, and they grow up to be lawyers, and they marry, I don't know, a guy that, he's a mechanic or something. Then at that point, hey, there's obviously going to be a huge difference, a disparity in the salaries, and they work really hard for their career. So why not put something to kind of protect in the event that something were to happen?
Right. Right. um this is one of those things, again, I think a lot of times emotion clouds it. Is there a way you think to introduce this? Like, at what point do you feel like prenups should be introduced into the dating relationship? That conversation.
To me, my question or my approach to that is, once you see that this relationship is getting serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once you see that, hey, this is becoming a serious relationship and there is aspirations to marriage, because you can be in a serious relationship, but if you're already divorced and both of you have zero desire to get married, then obviously it's irrelevant. But if you are in a serious relationship and you both do have aspirations of potentially getting married down the road, then I think once you engulf in that serious relationship, I do think that conversations needs to be had at some point, assuming that marriage is a possibility. Because if you're not going to get married, then I just don't see the point of having that conversation with somebody that you're just going out on a date or just casually seeing here and there.
Right, right. Um, and that's a good point because you hate to run people off by starting things too soon. Like, man, we just started talking, and already you talking about a prenup. Like, what the what? Like,
So
like
let
all
me
my conversations,
share.
like timing
So
is everything.
let me share two scenarios from people of my circle.
Hmm.
Um, so one gentleman, he put in a clause that whatever he had before the marriage is 100% his. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, whatever they gain from the time the marriage happens till whenever it ceases to exist, if that were the case, or if he did something that triggered the divorce, then she would have the upper hand in this scenario, and he would absolutely reward her or give
Hmm.
her access to the assets that are accessible from the time the marriage started and beyond. So
Okay.
basically, he told her, hey, if I screw up, you're going to be well taken care of
Hmm.
if he
So she.
screws up.
Uh-huh.
And even with that, he told me that 6 months prior to the wedding happening, she still asked, are you really going to make me sign a prenup? So even with that, she still felt some kind of way about
Hmm.
signing that prenup. And he stuck to his guns. But to me, I think that seems like a fair deal, right? Because if you're, negotiating and, you feel some kind of way about it, then to me, I think that's a fair way to say, hey, I still want to do right by you. And
Hmm.
I don't want to make this a free license to step out or act up or do whatever and disrespect the marriage. But at the same time, if maybe, after a year or two, she's just not into him, that also protects him from, being
Hmm.
played and, cleaning out his assets. Like I can tell you, when it comes to divorces, it seldomly works out for the man. I lost my house. So I know how
Right.
that feels. But to me, I knew in the long run that was the best move, but I was the one that bought that house, and then obviously I added her on the title. So she's winning. She won in that regard, but I won in finding my happiness and just starting over and getting a fresh start in life. And to me, I think there also has to be a consideration if there's kids involved, because obviously if
Hmm.
there's kids involved, then that's another clause that you have to address and add on there, that if there are kids, then the kids would, require XYZ. So that's why I'm saying that for people who maybe get offended or maybe just think that it kind of takes away from the marriage, you have the capability of adding clauses to negotiate stuff and to kind of find some middle ground to also not give someone that luxury or that power that they can just do whatever they want because all their assets are protected.
Right, right. Um, and I know in this day and age, like you just see so many when you look at the statistics on divorce, it almost seems like you just cannot possibly move without one. Do you think it's possible for a couple to um go into marriage without one this day and age?
I think it is, but I think that it's risky, because I just feel that we live in such a superficial society
Hmm.
that a lot of people are out here dating pockets and dating bodies, and the concept of genuine love is just starting to fizzle away, and the sanctity and purity of marriage has eroded completely. I mean, now, last time I checked, the divorce rate was like 3.5 years. It could be worse now. I haven't checked in a couple of years, but the last time I checked, the average divorce rate is 3.5 years.
Mm.
Yeah, like long are the days where you're going to see people married for 20, 30, 40 years like my grandparents. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Wow.
And we live in a society of instant gratification, And if something doesn't go right, then people are quick to pull the plug on it. And, some people have the reasons and merits. But to me, somebody that's just been in your life for a year or 2 or 3 years, to me, I don't think that's fair that, okay, this gives this person the right to literally get 50% of everything that you've built your whole life.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. Like even if my mate were to be the one with something, like I want you to retain what is yours. So like for instance, the house we lived in, my ex and his dad helped to build that. His family built that house. And so I didn't feel right feeling like I should get something from that because they had already established that home, which is again, one of those things that I think ladies, you got to think about like if if the if you're looking for someone to be the benefit to you, then it's just like we used to say in education, what the state gives, then the state can also take away.
Oof.
So, what a partner gives, then a partner may also be entitled to take away from you. So, I just think it's one of those things where you gotta know you offer something too. Now, mind you, a woman doesn't always have assets or a partner. Let me say it that way because it can be men as well that are not the breadwinners. Now, um, your partner may offer, you know, childcare. If you're the person who decided to stay home and the other partner went to work, like that person is working. I don't know if you ever kept kids all day, but do it one time and tell me they don't you don't owe them something. If they're the ones that caretakers. Caretaker is also the one that makes sure meals are ready and the house is clean. Go see what it costs you to get a domestic live in and think about what that's worth to you. So there are values that are not necessarily going to come in the form of things or in the form of money, but there should be some, I guess, in kind. Look at the reciprocity line when it comes to what did you do in the marriage versus, okay, they didn't work, but they did do these things. I went to work. What is the fair market share value for a nanny, for a housekeeper, for a cook, for daycare? Daycare alone, you ought to get at least a quarter. 'Cause I'm like, y'all see what check looks like after you pay for a daycare nowadays. That's crazy.
I've
But
heard the rumors, and it is rough. Now, I
yeah.
will say this. So, the research that I did, I actually checked out a video from Lex Clips, who interviewed an attorney who really got into the meats and potatoes of the benefit of having a prenup, and he framed it like this. He said, basically, look at a prenup as a way to inform the parties of the rules and expectations before the marriage starts. So, for example, right, like we discussed, you set your clauses so that way when you go into that marriage, and if you have an infidelity clause, you know
Mhm.
that hey, if you are caught cheating, this is the result of you doing that. So, to me as a woman, from that perspective, I think, hey, if you really love that man, right? If
Right.
he doesn't cheat on you, then you're going to be happy, and if he does cheat on you, then hey, you're going to be okay. That would be how somebody would be able to mitigate that whole okay. Well, why are you making me sign this if it's for love? Then okay, then just let's just negotiate it in the event that something were to happen, right? And at that point, I think that makes a lot of sense that you don't know how a marriage is going to play out until it plays out. So why not protect yourself just in case, or just set the ground rules that, hey, this is my expectations. This is what, this is how this is going to go down. I also have my own business that I've worked my whole life to obtain, or my degree, or my
Mhm.
lawyer license, or whatnot. And obviously, let's be real. Empires have fallen because of a woman's beauty. So a woman's beauty is very strong and very powerful, and powerful men have fallen because of it. So even powerful rich men. So to me,
Mhm.
I think there's a way to find middle ground where both parties can can still walk away um, in good grace because of that prenup. Because at the end of the day, there's also women who, like you said, are much more independent and are thriving more in different workforces, and
Mhm.
they also have to protect themselves from, when you start getting those rose-colored glasses and you can't see that, hey, you're marrying a con artist.
Right, exactly. So, it's just it's a lot to think about. So, just my final advice is don't make hasty decisions from the get-go. Really get to know a person, talk about these things. Like we always say, the conversation needs to be had because what you don't talk about, you may be endorsing or you may be, getting cut out in the cold and you don't even know it. Uh, but if you're not willing to have the conversation, then maybe you're not ready for that relationship at that level yet. You know, if you can't really do the hard heart to hearts, it may not be time to get married, or it may not be time to have a baby. It may not be time to get financially tied up together and you know, make your lives a little more complicated without these types of conversations. So, Poppy, without further ado, final thoughts from you.
So one thing that I wanted to add is that the guest attorney that was on the Lex Clips YouTube channel, he mentioned that he has seen interviews where people have lied about the actual prenups because they're not recorded. So it's between the attorneys and the individuals. So even if you were to sign one and you just don't feel like disclosing it to anybody, it's between you and your partner. So at the end of the day, you wouldn't have to worry about other people finding out unless you tell them.
Tell them.
Yeah,
Wow.
because it's not recorded, so it's not like a living trust where it's a recorded document in county records.
Oh,
So even a prenup, you could do it. It would be between you, your partner, and the lawyers. And if you want to tell the people that, hey, we didn't need one or whatever, then hey, that's your discretion. Because at the end of the day, it is a very private matter. And I don't know about you, but regardless of how much you have or don't have, most people don't like to just put all their business out there as far as their income and assets because it's a private matter.
right. Exactly.
But without further ado, just to kind of put a bow on this conversation, we appreciate all the feedback and all the support that we get from our listeners. As always, subscribe, like us. Please share our YouTube channel because the more ears and supporters that we get, the more ideas, the more motivated, and the more we want to work for you guys to enjoy some of this content and to kind of get some perspective on some things that we honestly don't really think about until it's too late.
That part. Look, no more to be said here. Thank you, everybody. Until next time.
Buenas noches, good people.